You. Right now, we're going to hear from Cole Cubelic from Jocks in Birmingham and college football analyst with ESPN and the SEC Network. What a day, Cole. What a 24 hours it has been since the announcement of Nick Saban's retirement at Alabama. I'm sure one of the more, I don't know if interesting, entertaining, exciting shows that you and Greg McElroy have done since the two of you have been paired up.
I would say all of those, and then some more adjectives you could probably throw in there. It doesn't feel real just yet. I don't think it's going to feel real for me until I see somebody else run that team out of the tunnel against Western Kentucky in week 1, and maybe even until I interview whoever it is. So it's just, I think we all kind of knew this day was coming, and we had Paul Feinbaum on Jocks last night when we went live, and he really, I thought, stated it extremely well. In that it's hard to actually get everything out that you want to say right now, because for so many years this has come up and we've wanted this to be a talking point, but there's a certain population of that fan base that would just go immediate attack mode to the point to where it just numbed you to it and you didn't even want to address it anymore. So we've just sort of left this alone for such a long time that I almost think now it's made it a little bit more difficult to talk about, because we haven't sort of let ourselves into it. And it did hit fairly quickly. Like, there weren't a lot of people, there weren't a lot of warning shots, there weren't a lot of flares in the air letting you know that this was coming. I mean, this was a little bit out of nowhere. The timing is not great for Alabama. The timing's not great for any coach in college football. But, Nick Saban obviously decided that it was his time. And so now the greatest coach of all time moves on, and the ripple effects is going to be loud. It's going to be heavy, because there's going to be a big-name coach that leaves wherever he is. He's going to take assistants. There will be some assistants that maybe stay in Tuscaloosa. Others that are very highly thought of going to have to find other jobs. And then, of course, the portal reopens for Alabama kids. That could be something that's very interesting and very different. So there's just a lot to it. And it goes into the biggest season of change that we have ever experienced in our lifetimes, and it only makes it that much more bigger. I mean, it multiplies it times 3 or 4.
Yeah.
We're already going to get these 2 super conferences. We're already going to have a 12-team playoff. We already have one conference that we all grew up with that's going to be dissolved and gone and just vanished. And then now you add the fact that Nick Saban's going to be gone. I believe Jim Harbaugh is going to be gone. That'll leave us with 3 head coaches that have won a national title that are going to be coaching college football next year. It's just it's insane to think about.
Cole, for the purposes of this conversation, I'm most interested in some of the interaction that you had with Nick Saban when nobody else was around. I think maybe most people know this, probably some don't, but when you do a television broadcast for a game, usually you go in and you visit with the home team in person. And I know that you and Tom and Jordan, especially when you had an Alabama game, would usually go the day before or a couple of days before and go to an Alabama practice and then have the opportunity to sit and visit with Nick Saban and talk to him about his team. Some coaches are very forthcoming. They're gracious with their time. They're engaging. Some are cold and standoffish. What was it like for you in those kind of one-on-one or three-on-one times with Nick Saban?
It was always awesome for us. And for me, it was a little bit easier because I can shoot over from Birmingham and get to practice. So we had their first game, so I went to a couple fall practices this year. He allowed me to come over, and he does a great job of always coming over and speaking to you during practice, after practice. I watched like 2 periods of practice with him one day during fall camp. He would always come over after practice. We were at a point where he would give me a hard time about a lot of different things. He always made fun of me because I would go watch the offensive line in practice, and he would always say, you can never learn anything watching the offensive line. You need to come watch the secondary. And so I'd go watch the secondary and give him a hard time that I didn't pick up on anything really that was happening there because he's just yelling at people the whole time. So it got to be pretty entertaining back and forth. And, you know, he called me a double agent at practice one day. That's why they had the music cranked or the noise cranked up, so I couldn't take any secrets back to Auburn, like giving me a hard time about that. He is – I mean, you just want to try to soak up as much of that knowledge as you can and some of that experience as possible and just some of his ideas. And we had a cool moment 2 years ago where I kind of asked him about coverage and pass interference and how difficult it is and how you coach around that. And he actually stood up and he's like walking us through demos and how he coaches it and how he teaches the DBs and things that you need to know of how to avoid getting a pass interference call and how you stay in phase and how you use your hands. And Josh Maxson, the SID, when he walked out, said, "Guys, I'm going to be honest with you. I've never seen him stand up and like demonstrate something for a TV crew. Like that was pretty impressive." So we were fortunate to be around him a little bit the last couple of years that I think, allowed him to let us in a little bit, sort of cracked the door open to a certain extent. And he's funny, he's entertaining, he's quick-witted, and when you get that far down the road with him, he's really cool to be around. And I got to share a couple of instances with him this year. We spent about 15, 20 minutes together on the field after the SEC championship game, and we talked about a lot of different things. I'm not going to share all of them, but it's something that I will tell my kids about before I die. That wow. The greatest coach in college football history, we had this discussion about these things. Like it was just that special. And so he was always great to us. He was always gracious with his time. Even if it was quick, he made sure he'd come over after practice, say hello, ask us how we were doing, if we needed anything. And never really was never quick and short when he would sit down with us for the actual meetings going into a game, and always shared great information with us. So it's tough, man, because it's always going to be limited the amount of time you get with him, and there's so much that you want to learn, or so many different discussions you want to try to have with him. That's why it was always tricky. Some of these guys are always so difficult. Like Lane is tough because I walk up to Lane, Richard, and half the time he's already talking, and I just put the microphone in his face, and he goes, and the quotes are amazing. Leach was, I would try so hard, and I would think so much about ways that I could be creative to ask him a non-football question that would lead into a football answer. And it was the biggest challenge of my career every time I talked to him. And with Coach Saban, there were so many things that you want to ask him that it was difficult to kind of try to filter through, okay, what answer do we need the most? Like, what do we need to hear him discuss the most? And had a lot of conversations with my producer, 5-7 minutes left in the half. Like, should we go here? Do I need to go there? What do you think? We're kicking things back and forth. So he challenged me in a lot of different ways, and I'll always be appreciative of that, and I'll always be appreciative of his time and the knowledge that he did share with us.
Will we hear from Nick Saban going forward? Do you see a low-hanging fruit here, college game day type role, or some other television capacity, or does he fade into the sunset?
No, he's not. I don't think he can fade into the sunset. I think he loves college football too much, and I think college football needs him too much. Now, I think you could see multiple roles. I could see, after today, there's some discussions about a role with the university. I think he understands the distraction that could be. So I think that could be something a little bit more entitled than maybe actually it is being in there watching film every day. However, keep in mind, Joe Pendry has been Nick Saban's guy that he leaned on for a long portion of his coaching career. And I think Nick Saban knows the value in that. You've heard me joke around about an FU coach before. Like, every coach needs a guy that can come in there and be like, hey, man, you need to stop doing this, or don't say that anymore, or hey, why is this kid playing? And they have your best interest in mind and the program's best interest in mind. Joe Pendry was that guy for Nick Saban for a lot of years. I think Coach Saban could see himself sort of being that guy, but I think he's going to have to be asked to be that guy. He's not going to go in there and say, hey, Greg Byrne, make me this and give me this title, and I'll do this and this and this for the team. That's not him. He doesn't need a victory parade. He doesn't need that one last year where he goes around and gets a motorcycle and a baseball bat and a car and an autographed ball from everybody. Like, he doesn't want that. He doesn't need that. But when you've poured as much of your life into this sport as he has, I honestly, Richard, I don't think you can walk away from it. And I don't think you can turn your back on it, because it's going to keep pulling you back in somehow, some way. So could I see him with some sort of a consultant role at Alabama that takes a little time, a television role, be it studio game day, that takes a little more time, and then maybe some other consulting role where he goes and speaks, or he does clinics, or people fly him in to look at their film and tell them what they need to adjust. I could see him doing some or all of those things, to be honest with you. I'm not sure one thing is going to satisfy him. And I know this. he's not going to be able to wake up every day and just kind of figure it out. Like, he's too organized, he's too regimented, he's too detailed. He's got to have things lined up, in my opinion, to sort of keep him happy. And Richard, he went into the office at 7:15 this morning.
Yeah,
he's calling recruits today. Like, I would imagine he didn't have to do that, but he just felt like that's what he should do. So it's going to be really interesting, but there's no way that he's disappearing. No shot.